Behind me, a child's drawing depicts a figure, its eyes leaking copper-tinged tears onto my fingers. I trace the damp outline with my thumb, the paper rough as dried blood. The office building reeks of mildew and the metallic tang of rusted pipes. My cane taps the floor, each click echoing in the hollow corridors of this brutalist relic. Inherited from a relative who never spoke of her, the place feels less like a house and more like a wound that's been left to fester. I reach the lead line box on the desk. Its seams are cold, the metal worn smooth by countless hands. My molars vibrate with the low-frequency pulse of the miniature sun inside. It's not a sun you'd see in the sky, more like a trapped heartbeat. The taste of iron floods my mouth as I lift the lid. Not blood, but the sharp, coppery bite of old pennies. The children's laughter starts then, faint but insistent, bouncing off the empty hallways. Click, 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 dice rolling on wood, the sound sharp as broken glass. My fingers brush the box's surface. It warms under my touch, the heat spreading like a fever. The laughter grows louder, closer. A shadow moves in the corner of my vision. No, not a shadow. The cat, its limbs stretch unnaturally long, tail tip flicking like a metronome. It steps onto the desk, fur the color of dried ink. Its tail grazes the box, leaving a single perfect ink smudge on the wood. The smudge doesn't spread. It pulses like a tiny dark heartbeat. I feel the cat's presence, its fur brushing my wrist. The laughter stops. The silence is thick, suffocating. I try to pull back, but my hand stays locked over the box. The ink smudge on the wood begins to expand, growing outward in a slow, deliberate circle. The edges blur, the ink bleeding into the grain of the wood like a stain that refuses to be washed away. The dice roll again, clicking softly, almost soothingly. Click, click, click. The circle widens, the ink spreading until it fills the entire desk, then the floor, then the walls. The laughter starts again, louder now, coming from every direction at once. The cat's tail curls around my wrist, its fur cold and wet as riverstone. I can't move. I can't breathe. The circle is complete. The ink smudge is now a perfect circle. The tuning fork hums against my thumb, a low-frequency pulse that vibrates in my molars like distant thunder. I press it to the piano key, and when I release it, the note resonates pure and clear as a bell tolling. But something shifts. The air seems to fracture around me, the molecules rearranging themselves into lines on the walls, lead-painted and stark against the parchment. Colored wallpaper. My fingers trace these sudden seams in reality, rough under my touch like dried ink cracked with age. They waver beneath my fingertips, rippling like shadows cast onto water. The laughter starts then, faint but insistent, bouncing off the empty hallways of this brutalist relic. It is the sound of children playing, except it is not quite right. There are no footsteps to accompany it, no echoes of joy or chase, just that relentless giggling, wet parchment tearing in my ears. The cat appears at my side, its limbs stretching unnaturally long as if reaching for something only it can see. Its tail flicks like a metronome, the tip tracing patterns on the dusty floorboards, patterns that seem to change, shifting into familiar shapes before dissolving back into chaos. My name, perhaps, or just the cat's whims. The laughter grows louder now, filling every corner of this forsaken place. It feels like it is coming from everywhere at once, echoing off walls and bouncing through empty rooms until I can't tell where it originates anymore. The sound grates against my skin like broken glass underfoot. I force myself to focus on the task at hand, tuning each key with deliberate precision, but every note seems to make things worse. More lines appear on the walls, more laughter rings out in the silence, until finally I can't take it anymore. I drop the tuning fork onto the piano keys, and the sound that fractures from it is nothing like a bell tolling now. It is a scream, raw and primal, filling every corner of this godforsaken building until even the cat seems to shrink back from its intensity. Then everything goes silent. The laughter stops abruptly mid-giggle, leaving behind an emptiness, so profound it feels physical, pressing against my eardrums like underwater depths. In that silence I hear something else. A faint clicking sound, rhythmic and steady like dice rolling on wood. It comes from the walls now, those lead-painted lines pulsing with each click, click, click as if they're counting down to some unspoken endgame. And then, without warning, one of them starts moving. It is slow at first, a creeping stain that spreads outwards like ink bleeding into parchment. But soon it picks up speed until the line is flowing across the wall faster than I can track its progress with my eyes alone. It flows down from the ceiling, down from the floorboards too, converging onto itself in a perfect circle right there on the wall before me. And at the center of that circle, a single word appears, written not by hand but carved into existence by the very movement of those lines themselves. The cat steps closer to it then, its tail curling around my wrist like a question mark. Its fur ripples again, forming letters this time instead of shapes. Letters that spell out one simple command: follow me. The hallway stretches out before me, its walls pulsating with lines of dried ink that seem to writhe like serpents beneath my touch. The cat walks beside me, its fur mapping out a path in intricate patterns that shift and change as we move deeper into this labyrinthine building. Each step echoes through the empty corridors, the sound ricocheting off the cold walls before dissipating into silence once more. The air is thick with dust motes, dancing in the faint light filtering through grimy windows, casting a parchment-colored glow over everything it touches. It is like walking through time itself. Each breath I take tasting of aged paper and forgotten memories. The taste of iron lingers on my tongue from touching that damned door earlier. It coats my mouth now with every inhalation. The cat's tail curls around mine, guiding me forward as its fur patterns morph into a layout of this ever-shifting building. A door appears at the end of the hallway, carved out by those very lines moving across the wall like liquid lead. The words "the box" are etched onto it in neat capitals, each letter jagged and harsh against the smooth surface. I reach out to touch them, tracing their outline with my fingertips. They're cold beneath my touch, colder even than the walls surrounding us. And there is something else too. That faint taste of iron again, metallic and cloying on my tongue as if I've licked a penny left forgotten in an attic. The children's laughter echoes down this new hallway now, bouncing off the walls with renewed vigor until it seems to fill every corner of this forsaken place. It blends seamlessly into another sound, though. A ticking clock that beats steadily against the silence like a heartbeat echoing from within my own chest. Each tick is punctuated by dice rolling on wood, their movements rhythmic and hypnotic as they click along unseen surfaces. The noise grates against me somehow, setting my teeth on edge with each roll until I feel ready to scream at the very air itself for daring to make such a sound. But before I can give voice to this growing frustration, something else happens entirely. One of those lines starts moving again. It flows down from the ceiling above that door, cascading onto itself in perfect symmetry as it forms another circle right there on the wall before me. And at its center, a single word appears once more, carved into existence by the very movement of those lines themselves. Map. The cat's tail tip presses against my wrist, then curling around like a question mark. Its fur ripples again, forming letters this time instead of shapes. Follow me. The door labeled 20, the boxy groans open before my touch, its hinges sighing like a lung collapsing. Beyond it, the air is dense with the scent of old honey and something sharper, like the metallic tang of a tuning fork struck against steel. My fingers brush the threshold, and the taste of iron floods my mouth again, thick as rust. I step inside, the soles of my boots pressing into a floor that feels alive, pulsing beneath me like the skin of a drum. The room is a cavity of shadows, but not the kind that swallows light. Instead, the darkness here is sifty sticky, clinging to the edges of my vision like wet ink on parchment. My fingers trace the walls, following the contours of something embedded in the plaster fine. Raised lines almost like braille, but for what, I don't know. The laughter of children echoes again, closer this time, their voices layered with a wet, guttural quality, as if they're speaking through water. The dice roll in the distance, their clatter now a steady, hypnotic click-click-click, like teeth grinding against bone. Then I see it. A child's drawing pinned to the wall with something that looks like a rusted nail. The paper is yellowed at the edges, brittle as a leaf left too long in the sun. In the center, a stick-figure woman sits at a piano, her fingers elongated, spider-like, pressing down on keys that bleed gold. The colors are wrong, too bright, too wetty, as if the ink was applied with blood instead of paint. My fingers hover over it, and I can feel the heat radiating from the paper like a fever dream pressed against my skin. I touch my fingertips to the gold. It spreads. Not like ink, not like paint, it moves, creeping along my skin in slow, golden veins, tracing the lines of my fingers like rivers carving through stone. The taste of iron intensifies, choking me, and I pull my hand back. The gold doesn't stop. It seeps into the air, swirling like smoke, pooling on the floor in a slow, molten puddle. The drawing's edges curl, the paper darkening at the seams, and then a sound. Not laughter this time. A whisper. Alice. The long-limbed creature steps forward, its paws pressing into the golden liquid, leaving prints that ripple like water. Its fur shifts again, the patterns rearranging into letters, into words, into a path that wasn't there before. The drawing behind me twists, the stick-figure woman's fingers stretching, elongating, the piano keys splitting open like wounds. The gold seeps into the cracks, and the paper begins to dissolve, not into ink, but into something darker. something that smells like burnt sugar and old coins. The child's voice rises again, closer now, a chorus of whispers pressing against my ears. Follow me. Fode reaches my wrist. The drawing is gone. Only the laughter remains. The keys beneath my fingers are cold, not with the chill of air, but with the numbness of something dead. I press down, and the sound that escapes is not music. It is a scream, raw and wet, like a throatful of ink being forced through a sieve. The walls shudder, not from the sound, but from the weight of something unseen. Something that clings to the air like a second skin. The ink begins to drip, slow and deliberate, from the cracks in the plaster, pooling in a thick black river at my feet. I step forward, my boots sinking into the liquid, and the floor groans like a thing waking from a long sleep. The cat is behind me, its long limbs coiled like the limbs of a spider, its tail flicking in slow, deliberate arcs. I don't need to see it to know it's watching. I can feel the weight of its gaze, the way it presses against my spine. A whisper of fur and bone. The patterns on its skin shift, not in a way that makes sense, but in a way that Tiffet seed, like a map being drawn in real time. I can see the building changing around me, the walls bending, the floor rising, the ceiling lowering, as if the space itself is being rewritten by the cat's will. I don't understand it, but I know it's true. The ink is deeper now, thick enough to pull at my ankles, to drag me forward, to make me move not of my own volition, but by the will of something else. My fingers brush the surface, and the liquid is warm, almost to add a live live, like the inside of a wound that has been left to fester. I can taste it on my tongue, the metallic tang of something old, something that should not be here. The air is heavy with the scent of burnt paper and something else, something that smells like the inside of a coffin after a year in the dark. I sink deeper, the ink rising to my waist, my thighs, my ribs. It is not a liquid, not really. It is a thing, a presence, and it is wind-hungering. I can feel it, the way it presses against my skin, the way it tries to pull me under, to drown me in the silence that lies beneath the surface. My breath comes in shallow gasps, my lungs burning with the need for air, for sound, for something, anything to break the stillness. The cat's voice is a whisper in my ear, a sound like the rustle of pages turning in a book that has been left too long in the sun. Follow me, it says, and I do. I do not know why, but I do. The ink rises to my chest, to my throat, and I feel it, the way it tries to choke me, to silence me, to make me for nothing. And then the ink rises to my waist. My fingers trace the cool, unyielding lines of lead embedded in the wallpaper. The map is intricate, a labyrinth etched into parchment yellowed with age and fear. I can taste iron on my tongue, not just from touching these lines but from every breath I take in this place. The cat's fur patterns shift beneath my touch, mirroring the layout of the office building around us. It is as if the very fabric of reality is being rewritten by some unseen hand, each line and curve a command etched into existence. The children laugh again, their voices echoing down hallways that shouldn't exist in this brutalist construct. I follow the lead lines with my fingertips, feeling each twist and turn like braille under my skin. The taste of iron grows stronger as I trace deeper into the map. It is not just a sensation now, it is an entity, pressing against my tongue, threatening to drown me if I inhale too deeply. The patterns on the cat's fur change pace with mine, leading me through this auditory funhouse. Its tail flicks behind us like a pendulum counting down time we don't have. The sun outside hasn't moved since I arrived here, stuck in an eternal blood-red sunset that casts long shadows and short tempers. My boots echo on the polished floor as if walking on dice rolling across wood. Each step is deliberate, measured against the silent ticking of a clock whose hands refuse to move. It is not just children laughing now, there are whispers too, hushed words and languages I don't understand but feel like they should know. The cat's tail tip points suddenly towards a door. I hadn't noticed before. It is different from the others. No handle, no keyhole, just smooth metal with a single word etched into its surface. The taste of iron is overwhelming now, filling my mouth completely. I reach out tentatively, feeling the chill radiating off the door despite the warmth of this endless sunset. My fingers hover over the inscription before pressing down firmly on each letter in turn. There is no click or groan as it opens. Instead, there is a wet tearing sound, like parchment being forced apart by unseen hands. Darkness yawns wide behind that doorway, swallowing all light and sound save for one thing: laughter. Children laughing again, louder this time, echoing from the void within. And with them comes something else. A whisper on the wind of my name, Alice. Come play. The metal felt cold, slick beneath my fingertips. Each letter of silence radiated a chill that bypassed warmth entirely, a localized pocket of winter in this unending ochre-soaked afternoon. The cat's fur, a shifting mosaic of angles and curves, mirrored the path ahead. the patterns tightening, becoming almost frantic as I approached the threshold. The taste of iron, previously a dull pressure, now flooded my mouth, a metallic tide threatening to drown out the laughter echoing from beyond. It clung to my tongue, coated the back of my throat, a phantom weight. The laughter was closer now, a discordant chorus of childish glee that scraped against the edges of sanity. It wasn't joyous, it was expectant, like a crowd waiting for a spectacle. My boots clicked against the polished floor, a frantic percussion against the unnerving quiet that pressed in from all sides. Click, 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 click. Each footfall a desperate plea for normalcy in a place where normalcy had long since evaporated. I registered the scent of dust, sharp and ancient, layered with something else, something faintly sweet like overripe fruit left to rot. My hand trembled as I pushed, and the door yielded with a sound that wasn't a groan, but a tearing. Parchment ripping under immense strain. Not the clean break of wood, but the violation of something carefully constructed, something deliberately preserved. The darkness beyond was absolute, a void that seemed to drink the light to swallow sound. Yet the laughter persisted, amplified, mocking. The cat pressed against my leg, its long limbs a strange comfort against the rising tide of dread. Its tail, a serpentine whip, traced the line of the doorframe before, with deliberate precision touching the handle, a faint tickus, as the mechanism disengaged, though I hadn't seen it move. The taste of iron intensified, a searing burn that made my eyes water. I felt a strange compulsion, a pull towards that darkness, a sense that I fully longed it there. Alice, come play. The laughter seemed to whisper directly into my mind. It wasn't malicious, not exactly. More inviting, a siren's call disguised as a child's amusement. I resisted, forcing my feet forward, each step a monumental effort against an unseen current. The patterns on the cat's fur became a swirling vortex, a hypnotic dance that threatened to pull me under. I focused on the map etched into the wallpaper, the lead lines a tangible connection to something familiar, something real. The floor beneath my boots felt uneven, subtly shifting. A low rumble resonated in my bones, a feeling more than a sound, like the earth itself was exhaling a sigh of weary resignation. The laughter warped, stretching into something elongated and grotesque, a mockery of childish delight. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing myself for something. When I opened them, the darkness hadn't diminished. The laughter hadn't ceased. The taste of iron was all-consuming, and the cat's tail tip, with a final deliberate gesture, touched the handle. The handle turned beneath my fingers like a rusted hinge, slow and reluctant, as though the door itself was exhaling its last breath. Beyond it, the air smelled of scorched wool and something older, like the first pages of a book, yellowed at the edges, the ink bleeding into the margins. The cat's tail, a black serpent, uncoiled from my ankle and stretched across the threshold, leaving behind a trail of fine powdery residue that glinted like crushed mica in the dim light. It wasn't a map yet, not in the way I'd come to understand it. No lines, no landmarks, but the suggestion of one, a promise of something drawn in absence. I exhaled and the breath came out thick, wet, like I'd been holding it too long. The iron taste in my mouth had settled into my bones now, a low, persistent hum, as if my blood had turned to rust. The laughter from beyond the door had stilled, but the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was sootful, pressing in around me like fingers against my ribs, counting. A pulse of it, sudden and unnatural, seeping through the crack in the door like syrup. My fingers twitched. The lead-lined box sat on the floor beside me, its edges softened by time, the seams splitting just enough to let the light out. It wasn't golden, it wasn't radiant. It was the color of a bruise left too long in the sun, deep, bruised orange, the kind of light that doesn't reflect, that absorbs. The cat's tail twitched against the floor, and where it touched, the wood darkened, the grain swelling into something like veins. I knelt. The box was heavier than I expected, the lead was warm, almost feverish, and when I pressed my palm against the seam, the resistance gave way with a sound like a sigh. The miniature sun wasn't a sun at all, not in any sense I recognized. It was a wound, a perfect circle of raw, unblinking light, pulsing with a rhythm that matched the slow, wet sweet-dew, drip, drip, drip of something falling from the ceiling. Ink, always ink. The air thickened, and the scent of it filled my lungs, sharp and metallic, like the first breath after a near drowning. The light pressed against my skin. Not warmth, pressure shy. It seeped into my fingers first, then my wrists, then climbed my arms like water, slow and insistent. The cat's tail dragged across the floor, and where it touched, the wood darkened further, the grain splitting into fine black lines, a map. At last, not of the building, not of the world, of the fund in my My veins, my bones, the paths of my nerves all laid bare in the shifting patterns of its fur. I should have been afraid, but the light was Subi kind. It didn't burn, it didn't scream, it simply furiwasu, filling the hollows of my ribs, the hollows of my skull, the hollows of my hands, and when I opened my mouth to breathe, the taste of iron was gone, replaced by something sweeter. Something like honey, like the first sip of wine after a lifetime of thirst. The cat's tail curled around my wrist and the light pressed harder. I didn't pull away. The piano was a relic, its surface pitted and worn, the wood so dark it looked like it had been boiled. I placed the lead box on the keys and the sound that came out wasn't music. It was a fracture, a jagged thing that split the air like a blade, and in the wake of it, the walls peeled back. Not in the way of a building, but in the way of a skin thin, translucent, and peeling away to reveal something behind. A cathedral of stone, yes, but not the kind of cathedral I'd seen in photographs. This one had no stained glass, no vaulted ceilings. It had 20 gaps, places where the walls were missing entirely, and through them I saw the sky. Not the sky of a sunset, but the sky of a sky that had never ended. It was a sky of rust and ash, and in its center, a single star burned white and unblinking like a wound. The cat's tail coiled around my wrist again, and the fur on its back shifted, the patterns changing with a slow, deliberate slowness. It wasn't a map of the building now. It was a map of twin my bones, my nerves, my blood vessels, all laid out in the black and silver of its coat. I could see the pulse of my heart in the fur, the way it beat in time with the miniature sun in the box. The sun wasn't a sun. It was a thing that twin breathed, its edges flickering like a flame caught in a windstorm, its light not warm but 20 hungry, pressing against my skin, my lungs, my thoughts. The taste of iron was back, but it wasn't the same as before. It wasn't the taste of blood or of rust. It was the taste of something older, something that had been buried and forgotten. And now it was Sundarthing itself, in my mouth, in my throat, in my ribs. I tried to swallow, but the iron was thick, and it clung to the back of my tongue, coating it like a film, like a curse. And then, laughter, not the laughter of children, not the kind that came from a hollow hallway. It was the kind that came from Fovenseed, from the walls, from the cracks in the floor, from the cathedral behind the cathedral. It was the kind of laughter that had no source, no origin, and it was Sufi loud, a sound that vibrated in my teeth, in my jaw, in my bones, and it was Sufi Natu, the kind of sound that belonged to the world. It was the kind of sound that belonged to the Fufadaidai, the side where the sun burned and the sky never ended, and the walls were not walls but Fufandi memories, and the piano was not a piano but a Fufatai. The miniature sun pulsed in my chest now, in time with my heartbeat, and the cat's tail curled tighter around my wrist, dragging me toward the cathedral, toward the gaps in the walls, toward the sky that had never ended. I didn't pull away. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I simply listened to the laughter, to the sound of it, to the way it filled the hollows of my ribs, and I let it take me. The piano keys felt like cold river stones beneath my fingertips. The miniature sun pressed against my ribs, a slow, insistent pressure, like a fist clenching bone. I placed my thumb on the note, not a melody but a single, sharp frankinquan that cut through the air. The children's laughter, those hollow, echoing giggles from the empty hallway snapped off. Gone. Just the sudden, deafening silence where sound had been. The silence was the worst thing. The silence that made my blind eyes ache. The cat's tail coiled around my wrist, cold and deliberate. Its fur shifted. The black and silver patterns dissolved, rearranging themselves like ink in water. I watched, my breath shallow, as the fur formed the letters ALICE, my name, etched in the black and silver. The sound of it wasn't heard. It was sufeltit in the bones of my wrist, a vibration beneath the skin. Then the dice, not the rolling I'd imagined, but the dry rattle of bones on wood. 3 dice heavy and cold, tumbling across the piano's worn surface, clack, clack, clack. Each impact a tiny sharp echo in the sudden quiet. The sound was wrong, too solid, too final for the air that had felt like smoke. The dice came to rest. One on the lead box, 2 beside it. The box was cold against the dice's bone surface. The miniature sun's pressure intensified. A sharp point against my sternum, its light flickering erratically, casting jagged shadows that seemed to drink the dim room. I didn't move. I didn't pull my wrist away from the cat's tail. The fur's patterns held my name solid and undeniable. The cat's eyes, deep and ancient, held mine. The miniature sun pulsed, a frantic, shallow beat against my ribs. The pressure was immense now, a physical weight, the light straining, flickering like a dying ember. I could feel the hunger in it, the desperate need to fulfill. The dice lay still. The children's laughter was gone. The cat's fur was no longer a map of the building, nor a map of me. It was simply my name, formed in the black and silver. And the box. The lead box, resting on the keys where I'd placed it. The miniature sun was gone. The box was empty. The cold, smooth lead surface of the box was utterly, terrifyingly devoid of light. The pressure against my ribs vanished, replaced by a hollow chill. The dice rattled once more, a final dry whisper on the wood. The cat's tail tightened, dragging me toward the gaps in the walls, toward the rusted sky. The box was empty. The miniature sun was gone. The cat's fur held only my name, the silence pressed in, thick and heavy, broken only by the sound of the dice, rolling on wood.